On ANZAC Day at Yale University in the US, New Zealand Prime Minister Mr David Lange made an announcement that stunned officials in America, in Australia, and his own country, New Zealand. Mr Lange gave notice that his country may well resign from ANZUS, the Pacific Security Alliance that the three countries have had since just after the Second World War. We're joined now from Auckland by one of the most vocal critics of the anti-nuclear policy that led to this announcement, former Prime Minister Sir Robert Muldoon. Sir Robert, how do you do?
Fine.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you believe that ANZUS is over?
Well, effectively it's been over since the change of government in 1984, but there's every indication that there'll be another change of government here next year. Then we'll put it back in place.
Let's just explain for those people, including myself, who get a little into the grey area about ANZUS, exactly what was it brought forward for just after the Second World War?
1951. It was a defensive pact between the three countries, Australia, the United States and New Zealand. Curiously, it was principally designed to combat any possible resurgence of Japanese militarism. But as the years went on, it became the primary defensive pact of Australia and New Zealand, regardless of what the threat might be. And we also said here in New Zealand, as Australia did, that if America was attacked, we'd go and help her too.
From your experience as Prime Minister, when those meetings are held between among the three powers, it would just seem to me that America would call all the shots. Is that true?
Well, that statement's a little bit naive, because in international cooperation, in this kind of thing, no one calls all the shots. You work out together how you can fit into a pattern. And so your military people put together a strategy, and each country says, well, I'll fill in that bit. And if you're a big country, you fill in a big bit, and if you're a little country, you fill in a little bit. And back in the 1950s, we had what they called the Radford-Collins Agreement, which divided up the South Pacific, south of the equator, into three sectors, really for surveillance, because if there was any kind of attack, you do it in a rather different way. But Australia had a medium-sized area, the United States had a big area, and New Zealand had a little wee area. It's a bit like the three bears.
Mummy bear, daddy bear and little baby bear.
That's right. We had the middle bit.
Yes,
went right up to the equator, though, right up as far as Kiribati.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Sir Robert, though, I mean, if you've got a situation where the Prime Minister of New Zealand is being ignored in America, and the Vice President of America is coming to this area of the world and not visiting New Zealand, things are not good for you, are they?
I wouldn't overemphasise that. When you say he's being ignored, our Prime Minister, if the Prime Minister of a friendly country makes the kind of statements that our Prime Minister's made since he's been in office, he's not being ignored. They really just write him off as a credible figure. When he didn't go to the White House and he said, oh, there's all kinds of hoods go to the White House, that wouldn't make much of an impact in Australia, in Canberra, or even in Wellington, but my word, it did in the United States, because for the Americans, the White House is only part political, the rest of it's Buckingham Palace. And he made a very, very stupid and very damaging statement when he said that, and there's no way an American president's going to meet this fellow.
Okay, so Robert, the relationship between Australia and New Zealand to me seems to be a little strained, and has been for a couple of years. You know, at all levels, not just at political levels, but as person to person. I mean, it probably sounds ridiculous, but I don't think the underarm incident did us a lot of good, and didn't certainly do relationships between the two countries good. How do you feel about Australia over there?
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with Australia as a country or as a people. Back in the 80s and 90s of the last century, my family went back and forth between the two, depending where the jobs were. And my mother was born in New Zealand, but her brother and sister were born in Australia, younger. And that's the way it's been, travel back and forth. There have been things that have soured the relationship. I think Malcolm Fraser, and contrary to many opinions, Malcolm Fraser and I were not deadly enemies. We just didn't see eye to eye on certain things. But when he required passports to get into Australia after we'd had totally free entry for all that time, so that an Australian coming to New Zealand didn't need a passport to get into New Zealand, but he needed a passport to get home again. That was one of the sillier things that was done. Similarly with investment. We eased up on investment, but found that the Australian government wasn't easing up on New Zealand investment in Australia. Right now we've got the same thing with Margaret Thatcher's government and the Goodman Fielder Rank Hovis thing, where Lord Young put the lid on that. And now the Brits would be terribly angry if the Australian and New Zealand government put the lid on the reverse. You see, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, but in years to come,
I think you're talking about.
Yeah, in years to come, Sir Robert, I mean, we will have to be together, won't we? Because we share the same part of the world.
Well, of course, and we are, you know. We fight like brother and sister, but as against the rest of the world, we stand together. We expect things like underarm bowling from the Australians.
Now, hang on a sec. Wait on. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, as far as Australia's concerned, sport's something you've got to win no matter what the tactics are.
Oh, wait on. I think you'll find that New Zealand hasn't got the greatest record in that area either, have they?
Well, you tell me one.
Well, I just think the very fact that they reacted that way from the underarm incident, it was there on the rule books. It's there on the rule books.
What you're really saying is if someone employs dirty tactics against you, you just grin and say, oh, well, they're the big boys, we got to knuckle under.
No, not at all, but it was there, and I personally don't think that it should have been bowled, but it's there on the rule books to use, isn't it?
Yes, of course, and that's exactly what I'm saying.
Let me just ask you one personal question.
The same applied in the investment field, you know, that we opened up New Zealand to Australian investment, but then we found when we went over there, and we had one or two fairly big ones, they said, oh, no, you can't take over Australian companies. Now, that's the underarm bowling in the financial sector.
Fair enough. Can I ask you one personal question? I'm not too sure whether it's been asked of you before. At a personal level, how do you feel about being called Piggy?
Well, Australia's the only place that does it, you know.
We've got to have something going for us.
Yeah, this was a nickname I had 20 years ago, and like many other things, Australia's 20 years behind the times.
No, hang on a sec. It's a nice tag, though, and I'll give it to you. From Moonface to Piggy, good luck. Thanks a lot, Sir Robert. That was Robert Muldoon.